Good evening. This is Rodney Reynolds, founder of American Legacy Network. And tonight I am having a fireside chat with two special individuals I've known for a number of years. And I'm glad that they are joining me on this fireside chat. Audrey Peterson, who is the former editor in chief of American Legacy magazine. She was our editorial director for, I'm going to say, 13 years. Is that correct, Audrey?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's about 13 years or so. And glad to have her here with us. And then Leanna Jackson, who is a writer and educator. Um, I'm not going to call her a historian because she told me not to call her a historian, but I think she's a historian as well. She just wrote a great piece, by the way. Josh, you want to pull that up? A great piece in Essence magazine um, on uh, the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, and it's entitled "Remembering Black Wall Street." That's her story as it appeared in the May June issue of Essence magazine. So I urge everyone who is tuning in with us this evening to pick up the May June issue of Essence and read Leanna's story. So, welcome to both Audrey and Leanna. Glad to have you with me tonight.
Great to be here.
Good to see you both. Good to see you both. You
Yeah,
know,
Wonderful to be here. Yep.
I know our subject matter tonight is really talking about the 100th anniversary of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. For years it was called the Tulsa Race Riot, and you kind of wonder. I don't remember when it changed from riot to massacre. I don't know if any one of you know.
I I don't know. Do you know, Audrey? I mean, I
No,
know.
no, I was wondering.
Yeah, and the woman that I interviewed was a fourth generation um, member who still lives in Greenwood, and what she told me was that there was a lot of denial about what happened on both, well, not on both parts, but like the black folks that still lived there were afraid to really speak up too much because the people that came and burned down the homes and killed their friends and their family members were still lurking around. No one was arrested. Nothing was done to
Yeah,
them. So there
yeah.
was a lot of denial for a long time.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, and I've got had a number of responses to the video that we released yesterday, but I'm wondering, why is it that a lot of people have said that they never really had heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre and Black Wall Street. I'm amazed at, in 2021, the number of people that I've run into have said that they've never heard of it. And even some of the responses we've received back over the last couple of days have indicated that they never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre. I mean, we did, Tim Reed and I uh, executive produced a program, a segment of, we had a syndicated television program called Heritage Moments for about 3 or 4 years in the early 2000s. And one of the segments that we um, created in 2003 was actually uh, a segment called "The Day They Bombed the Promised Land,"
Mm.
and it was on the Tulsa Race Massacre. It was narrated by the journalist Dwayne Wickham, And so that was in 2003. So, but I'm just wondering, why is it that, you run into people today and it's something like they've never heard? It was almost like Juneteenth to a certain degree. People were saying, well, they didn't know about Juneteenth. And so it just amazes me that in this day and time that you run into people and they say they never heard about the Tulsa Race Massacre.
And I've heard the words Black Wall Street prior to doing the article. I mean, I even majored in African American studies in undergrad, and I didn't learn a thing about Tulsa or any of the other race massacres that occurred in this country. It wasn't being taught until recently in Oklahoma. It's still not being taught in the rest of the country.
And why is that? I mean, it's because when you look back, I was looking the other day at some information that there's been massacres in a number of cities across the country throughout the years. There's a list that I actually
Right.
even have here that indicates, Detroit, New York, Chicago, Springfield, East St. Louis, Philadelphia, Charleston, Atlanta, Rosewood, St. Bernard's Parish, New Orleans. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so it's been a part of our history for years, but it's something that just haven't been covered in the mainstream.
No,
And is
no,
there, go ahead.
I'm
yeah, Audrey.
I was going to say I'm going to
Or just
talk, but I'm not sure where I'm coming in because
Good.
I'm getting a little static. My
You're
connection
good.
is really bad.
You're good.
Okay. So one of the things I'm really concerned about as you're talking about things not being taught, it's a complete and continuing lack of acknowledgement for one, and it's here 100 years from now, in that we have politicians in various states trying to shut down the very education that we need. When you talk about critical race theory, I want to say, don't even call it critical race theory, call it critical race facts, because that's what, you know, we cannot have our history, and this is something Rodney recognized years ago. We cannot have our history, Black history, it's inextricable. And to tell me, at the risk of sounding inflammatory, these narratives are fairy tales that have been put in our history books in the past, to kind of soothe consciousnesses and to justify behavior and why we do the things we do. And it's exhausting and disheartening that we have to keep fighting to make it known. I mean, when you look at, I know that part of what we might want to discuss today is what they did with the people who were killed, were murdered. And, where were they buried? Were they buried? Were they in Arkansas? Where were they? And this is something that goes deep and wide in the Black culture and community all over. I mean, when you look, we covered the African burial ground in New York. It took decades to get it to where the descendants of enslaved people in New York and African Americans in general. It took decades for us to get it to where it needed to be, where they were honored, acknowledged, you know, and buried properly, the ones that they did go. So this is a nationwide issue, but it really culminates in Tulsa, and the education and the acknowledgement is such a necessary thing.
Well, Leanna, in your article, you talk a little bit about, I know you interviewed um, some
Yes.
descendants, fourth generation descendants from the families that were in Tulsa. Tell us, just if anyone is tuned in and they don't even know, since I go back to my first question of, people not knowing, tell us what Black Wall Street is or was.
Oh, yeah. That actually it was called Negro Wall Street first.
Okay.
Booker T. Washington came to Greenwood and he just saw something he probably had never seen anywhere else before, just Black people doing really well. There were hundreds of businesses. I believe the count was 600. And they were self-sufficient. And the dollar circled in that area, in that neighborhood, in that community, 36 to 100 times during a year before it actually left. I dare say there probably is no Black community today that has that happening. I'm not sure, someone fact check me, but they were doing so well. And it was just a cohesive community, a powerful community in many, many ways. So at first he called it Negro Wall Street, and eventually the name Black Wall Street became, how it was known. There was I don't know why I'm so impressed with this thing, but there was a 750 seat theater. I guess when I think of 1921, I'm thinking people were at home, reading books, not going to the theater. And they had this huge 750 seat theater.
Now,
To me, that was
you say
impressive.
that, and I, what popped in mind when I heard you say that on the video that you so graciously appeared in and contributed to. Um, what popped in my mind was, well, what movies were they watching
Right?
in that theater at that time in 1921? So, any idea what kind of movies they were watching at that time?
They must have been talkies. Is that what it's called? The talkies, where you just have to read the silent movies.
Oh, the
You have
silent
to
the
read.
silent movies.
I'm guessing the subtitles. Yeah. What do you think, Audrey?
That would be interesting to know.
What kind of movies
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
if there's a
1921?
750 seat
I
theater,
Well, I
they
know
have to be
Oscar
watching something
Micheaux
in there.
was in a 350 seat theater, which is huge.
It is huge. That's a big theater.
Well, I know Oscar when Oscar Micheaux was doing his movie with Paul Robeson, and they were silent.
Mm.
I don't know if it's circulating that year. I'd have to look that up because Oscar Micheaux was a long time ago for a legacy.
Well,
But
that's interesting
I
though.
do know there was a healthy amount of movies and film geared toward the Negro population. There was Negro films, Negro, that's what they called them. And so, exactly what they might have been, exactly, I don't know, but I know that, along with what might be nationally popular,
Mhm.
because we all watch those movies too, mostly watch those movies, there might have been, films geared toward the Black population also that were popular, that were made.
One of the other things I was going to say that I found extremely impressive, O.W. Gurley went to this territory with the intention of building this community. And I think it was 1904. The Emancipation Proclamation was in what, 1863, right? Right, Audrey? Was it 1863? I believe it was.
Yes.
1864
The Emancipation Proclamation.
when? Yeah, the Emancipation Proclamation was 1863.
And
Yeah,
1904.
yeah, they didn't participate into.
In 1904, he had the consciousness to move and buy land with the intention of building this kind of community just that many years after our folks were enslaved. And to me, that's just impressive. And I was saying to the young lady that was interviewing me the other day, you know, that while this is a sad memory for us and it will be a stain on American history forever, it also gives me a lot of hope. And I think that if we can take something good out of it and think, listen, if we did this once before, we can do this again and again and again. And not only can we, but we need to, right? We need to do it again. There's nothing stopping us. We have more opportunities now than they did how many years after slavery?
Well, that's certainly
Right.
true.
Right. It's,
My other son, JP, yesterday sent me a Twitter a tweet, I should say, tweet from, I guess, a guy who is a journalist and author. Maybe you two have heard of him, Michael Harriot. Um, he's a journalist, but he put out a tweet, and I wanted to get your feedback on it. And there was a long thread, but I'm only going to read the first part of it. It says, on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, let's acknowledge that what happened in Greenwood was not a spontaneous eruption of hatred. That's the narrative that America likes to portray. But what happened on May 31st, 1921, is an example of systematic racism,
Absolutely.
systemic racism. And so I just wanted to get each of your feedback on, you know, his take on it.
I agree with that statement. There was a lot going on. Yes, it was right after the Emancipation Proclamation and Black people were, quote, free. And it was also a few years before the Depression, right? So there's a whole lot of economic things going on. And you've got, from what I understand, the same men who came in and burned the place down were struggling financially. What is it like when you're filled with that kind of hatred to see people who were once working for free now doing everything you were doing and better? They had hotels, not just one hotel, several hotels that were on par with the finer white hotels in that area and the country. And these men didn't own one business. They had several businesses, some of them. They were buying their wives fine china, and clothes were being imported. And these people, right, at one point were slaves. And that really made that mob angry before they ever got to the point where they lit that match and burned that place down. So when that situation happened between that young man and that woman in the elevator, rumor has it that they were in a relationship, by the way. That was just what it took for them to just say, oh, now we have an excuse. We're going to defend this woman. But it was boiling up inside of them, I'm sure, all along.
Audrey,
and,
what do you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So here we had, they called it Red Summer too. And there were several of these riots and so-called massacres. Riots then, now we're calling them massacres, where white folks were simply going into, established Black neighborhoods and communities, much like Greenwood, but maybe not as extensive or as populated as Greenwood, and just, finding any excuse to burn it down. And this whole thing with the young lady in the elevator, that was a dog whistle, used nationwide. And we saw that over and played out over and over again. All they had to do is say it, however much of a lie it was, and then that was this. I mean, sometimes I wonder why they even bothered to come up with an excuse, because they were, there was, we look at this, they were jealous, they were envious, all those things were in place, but everything was in place, including the ready-made excuse and the justification and the aftermath where, nobody talked about it. There was no apology. There was no, I mean, the closest I think they came is the Chamber of Commerce. The town fathers were kind of chagrined because they were trying to come off as this kind of shining metropolis, the new metropolis or whatever, and be like other big cities and be urbane and all of that. And they wound up looking like a bunch of, backwood hicks, but it wasn't about feeling bad for Black people, you know? So yeah, it was all in place.
How do you think the residents of the community had the wherewithal to become so self-sufficient during that time in the early, 1900s? You touched on it a little bit about, being inspired by, Gurley and coming to the area specifically to build it. But I mean, what gave them that fortitude, to want to press on, to be self-sufficient? I mean, that's a pretty amazing given the time period.
I don't know if too many people know this, but there were men who moved there from other states who were educated, college educated men. Okay. So, I mean, it's not like it was just some randomness. There was definitely a process to it. And not only that, we came from Africa, where there were kings and queens and royalty and gold and diamonds. Like that was in us. And although we were beaten down for so many years and tried to beat all of that out of us, genetically, it was still in us to want the best and want the finest to this day, right? I mean, that's not something that we had to learn. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, piggybacks on yours in that, look how far we came from 1619, I mean,
Yeah.
and what we built and how we survived. I mean, when I think about the blood that runs through my veins, um, that came from a descendant because, my African descendants were enslaved in North America. So they had to survive becoming enslaved in Africa, depending on where in Africa that was, waiting to be taken away. They survived that. They survived the ship over,
That's right.
and then they survived all those generations of slavery. Okay. So, you know, and
Absolutely.
then they managed to do what, many of their white counterparts couldn't do and do it better sometimes, often, you know, built not only building this country and contributing to culture, a part of the culture, you know,
Yeah.
but so it's really not a surprise to me that when they got out to educated and everything else, they got out to Oklahoma, they were going to make something of wherever it was they stopped, because that's the way it's been and still
And
is,
that I was going to say,
you
and
know.
that is how it is today. I mean, we persevere
Yes.
and we continue to press on no matter what the obstacles. And I'm sure all three of us can talk about that in our own lives. The obstacles that we have been faced with and how we have persevered to overcome. You know, I think about the American Legacy brand uh, being still in existence for going on now 26 years, and having to pivot from being a primarily print brand to digital and video and other things and mobile experiential, which I didn't think about, you know, when we were publishing the print edition. So, but you try to persevere, you try to navigate the minefields, and we find ourselves doing that all the time, because of the things that we're faced with here in America on a daily basis. Someone has said to me last year that we were facing the coronavirus and the pandemic, and I said, well, Black people live with a pandemic every day. The coronavirus was just one, but every
Mm-hmm.
day our existence is sort of a pandemic because we're dealing with one thing or the other. And so
Yeah.
um, we come from a strong line of people, our ancestors, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's why we're still here today, pushing forward. You know, I heard one of the survivors say that for the past 100 years. I think she was 6 years old when when the bombing happened. That she sort of has thought about it on a daily basis over the past 100 years. And I wanted to ask, what kind of problems physically or emotionally or psychologically do you think still remains in the community, not only with the survivors, but with their descendants?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if you just imagine today, 35 blocks of, let's pick Manhattan. Even if you think about 9/11 and what happened, and to this day, how we think about what happened on 9/11 and the people that were lost. Now, imagine if it was 35 blocks of Manhattan, just burned to smithereens, everybody there either burned or shot to death, no proper burial. When would New Yorkers stop thinking about that when they get on the train, when they get on the ferry, when they pass certain areas? That trauma is embedded, and I don't think that you
Yeah.
ever get rid of that. And scientists, psychologists are saying to this day that trauma is embedded in your genetics. So if it's embedded in the mama and the daddy, then it gets passed on to the next generation, and they start reacting to things in ways that they don't even know why they're reacting in the way that they're reacting. It's just embedded in the genetics. So I mean, I don't believe that anyone has done a formal study of how it's affecting people. I know for the woman that I interviewed, Regina Goodwin, she's a fighter. Her family, every generation, they were fighters. And to this day, she is a fighter. Her license plate says pay Black Wall Street, and she will fight probably until she can fight no more. So, there are probably people who are also just still afraid of rebuilding, of trying to rebuild. And there are so many forces that are against them as it is. I mentioned in our interview about that stadium, like the space that occupies. There's a satellite HBCU in that area as well. That's just kind of, it's floundering because now they've got the stadium taking up space. They have a satellite for a PWI, which is primarily white institution, taking up space. You've got gentrification going on in that area. It's 75% white. I don't know what the people there, they must
Mm-hmm.
feel probably beat down because every time you try to do something, you're getting this wave of government wave just pushed back against the effort. Then you've got the highway. And when you have a highway in a community, what happens? If you start a business, people with the big shopping malls, people aren't stopping. They're going on that highway to the big mall. They're not coming to your little mom and pop shop, you know? And I'm not going to say that the Greenwood, now it's the Greenwood Historical District. I'm not saying they're not doing well. Obviously, they're doing well, but are they doing well for the African American community? And that I can't confirm.
I know there are a number of
Exactly.
efforts.
And there are
Go ahead.
descendants.
Go ahead, Audrey.
I was going to say, I was watching, there's so many documentaries out too, along with articles. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was watching one or a particular one, well, listening to one particular one on NPR, and they were interviewing descendants, and they had one young man who was like, my grandfather or great grandfather had it was basically a not a juke joint, but a club, and it got burnt down, and he kept trying to build it, and he found all these roadblocks, and he finally just left Oklahoma altogether, and the highway is built over the one of the spots where his club was,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, that's my inheritance underneath that highway. And then they talked to another young lady who, after Greenwood burned down, her family built a beauty shop. That beauty shop has been in that area for decades, but now she's priced out. She had to move out of, the Black Greenwood section, and some of her, she couldn't. She said, when I talk about it, I just want to cry because of gentrification. And somebody else called it the dry massacre, where you had the massacre back in 1921, and now gentrification and all of the kinds of things that go on that African Americans up against to try to have a business and try to thrive. That's causing them not to be able. So you have the generational trauma, but then you also have the great loss of generational wealth.
Yeah.
And with no, I mean, it's bad enough that it's hard enough to hear that nobody wants to give you any reparations. And somebody said, well, why don't you give us land? Land would be reparations. But when they want to not only not acknowledge but erase the it right out of history, that's like that's triple trauma.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the woman that I interviewed, her family, they came back, the Goodwins, and they rebuilt. And in the 60s or the 70s, sometime in there, the government said, listen, we want that land, out you go. And she said now in 2021, that land is still sitting there empty. And that family wasn't the only family that got pushed out of their home.
So they basically took the land from them.
Yeah, they didn't have a choice. And so it's like, well, what are you planning? What are you plotting? We're trying to rebuild. And while we're trying to rebuild, you're pushing us out of our home.
Yeah.
So, I heard something.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I heard something last night that's sticking in my craw. The mayor said that he thinks that what happened in 1921 could happen again today. And I just had, while I was writing this article, so much was going on in the world that, I felt traumatic. Like I was going through trauma at it, while writing it, because you had the Capitol, what happened at the Capitol in January, and all of the protests, and then being stuck in the house during a pandemic, it was a lot. It's a lot. And to hear him say something like that, I don't know. It's almost like it's triggering, because why would you even form those words and put that energy out into that universe?
That's what I was going to ask. I mean,
yeah.
what brought him to that conclusion?
They didn't ask, or they asked him. They didn't put it in that clip.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting take. That what happened in 1921 could happen again today. Well, I guess if you see what took place on January 6th, and the white supremacists, all those people that were there on January 6th, they're somewhere as we walk the streets in every city, across this country. And, that I think about that. I think about that all the time. I think about, it's like, have they gone into hiding? you know, and are they waiting to come back out at another designated time period? You know,
Mhm.
it's something to certainly
Well, I like
think
to
about
take,
and consider.
I take this view of, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I take this view of it. In 1921, and if you really look at like public opinion and over the decades and over the centuries, and I tell this to my friends who, you know, who feel traumatized and who feel triggered, and they call me up and they're like, you know, what's happening? What are we going to do? And I say that, you know, the shift in the mainstream perception of how Black people should be treated, it has shifted. You know, there are more people percentage wise in the United States who, you know, feel that, um, you know, people other than whites should be treated equally and should be treated with respect and rights than ever before, percentage wise. I mean, there was a time when not too long ago when white folks were like, yeah, I don't know, civil rights, equal rights, you know, we're not against, we don't hate Black people, but, you know, we're not going to work, knock ourselves out, you know, and that was the majority of white people in America, you know, like in my dad's time, you know, so, and even, you know, as late as the mid right up till the voting rights laws and even that had to be jammed down everybody's throat. So when I look around me and I realize that there are more and more, first of all, there are more and more people who were once considered minorities than ever before, and that demographic is shifting, and that's part of what's triggering all this other nonsense that's going on because you know this fear that you know this unearned power, unearned privilege that has gone on for centuries and decades is slipping away. So
They
that
feel under
you know
attack.
brings that out. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
pardon?
I said they feel under attack, that they're losing something. You
Yep.
know, they've had
And
a gravy train for
you know,
so long.
I got a secret. I got a secret. They gonna lose it. You know, it's not going to be here forever, and it's not going to be that way. And but you know, it's fighting hard. You know, fighting hard against it. But
In every way of life. I
I mean,
mean, the you know the
yeah,
Voting Rights Act now is under attack. You know, the renewal of it. I mean, just think about that.
I,
This is 2021,
because
and we're still fighting for the right to vote. You know, and to make it voting accessible to all Americans, people of color. You know, it's just amazing when you think about it. It's
well, yeah, it but the reason why they're fighting is because we have it, and it works, and that's why
and
you
it
know
works extremely well in
what I'm
2020. Now they want to take away those rights.
saying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's the only way they figure they can ever win another election. Because the demographic, they used to be because they had white on their side, you know, and conservatism or whatever. And I'm not saying every white person is conservative, every Black person isn't, you know, plenty of Black conservatives, white liberals. But what I'm saying is that, you know, they had the numbers on their side. Now they don't. And
Well, I mean, when you
they
saw the
see what a
marching,
coalition of,
when
pardon?
you see the people who were marching last year during the George Floyd um, protests, there were people from all walks of life, and they see that, and so that's another reason why they feel that they have to fight more than ever to hold on to that power. And it's just an amazing position to be in, and it's something that we really is a cause for concern.
And that's a question that, that comes to mind. We are commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre because we need to speak on it, not just this year, but every single year and whenever we can, so that we don't forget. Because what they say about history, something's in my eye, I'm sorry. What they say about history is if you forget it, you're doomed to repeat it. And the question becomes for the broader audiences, this happened 100 years ago. We have not gotten that far mentally away from what happened in terms of the way people think, or someone to say this could happen again. What do we do moving forward? We need a plan. What do we do moving forward? I don't think that O.W. Gurley had, when he thought of Greenwood, his mission was, well, let me go over here where only Black people are going to prosper. He did it because there was no way for them to prosper within mainstream America. Moving forward, what do we do? And I know there are people out there who are working on their websites that are called Black Wall Street, but is the Black Caucus doing something? I know they were there today in Tulsa, but we need a plan. We can't just keep talking about things and things that have happened in the past and not have a plan forward. So that's my call out there to whoever's listening. What do we do with all of this information that we are now privy to, not just because of the documentaries, not just because of the HBO special, the movies and the series and things that people are now being hit to, like finding out in different ways what happened in Tulsa. Somebody step up. Some group of people, one person. O.W. Gurley had a plan, right? Somebody please out there, hello, step up and tell us what we do moving forward from this knowledge, because now we are educated with it and we need to figure out what comes next.
Do you think there is a cohesiveness in the African American community to be able to bring something like that forth? Or is everyone, going in their own different directions today?
No.
But that doesn't mean that it can't happen, right? Jesse used to say, keep hope alive. My hope comes from there's something biblical about putting rocks down so that folks that come by after know that there were people who were there and they made it, right? Greenwood is a rock for us. And not just Greenwood, but every other prosperous Black person, Black neighborhood, Black business person, people such as yourself, Rodney. You took it upon yourself to say, listen, we need to have a vehicle where people can read about Black history because there was nothing. And as far as cohesiveness, all I can do is keep hoping that we keep talking and we keep educating our young folk. We keep educating people who don't know about where we came from and who we are, and stop allowing the forces that be to beat us down to the point where we don't realize, nowadays people say, hey, king, hey, queen, do you really know what that means? And do you really put yourself on that pedestal and that mindset? We need to realize who we are. And it's not that I'm saying we're better than anybody else. That's not it. But I don't know of any other group of people that have been and continue to be beat down mentally, physically, to this day. So as far as cohesiveness, for Christ's sake, if George Floyd, Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, and I can go down the list, doesn't get us to a place where we start loving each other like back in the 70s, brother, my sister, Black love, whatever, if we don't get to a point where we get there again, I guess there will not be any cohesiveness, but I will, until the day I'm gone, continue to believe and to hope. And even if it's one person that I meet in the street and I say, hey, you know, you're my brother, you're my sister, and I just show them that love and we just continue to do it, it's contagious and it builds power. And if we all just keep doing it and keep that fire going, then yeah, we can build cohesiveness. I'm going to say, yes, we can do it.
Audrey?
I feel that I look at it as the education. Definitely, that is a key word, and part of education is the telling the full story and not the narrative that they put into our history books. When I was growing up, at least, and when many people were growing up, and George Floyd and a lot of the things that George Floyd was really so seminal in that not that it was any different than all the other times where police or white citizens shot black people and killed them for no reason or beat them up or and killed them. It was the first time that I had my white liberal friends were coming to me and asking me serious questions and asking me. And there was a time, there was part of I had to mourn, I had to grieve. So there was a point where I was just like, I'm tired of telling everybody, I've been telling you this for years, and now you want me to school you on this, and I'm tired, But after a while, I started coming around and I was like, okay, you want to know, you're asking me this because you really and truly in your heart want to know about, our race problem, on from my point of view, and so, I have seen a sea change on my own personal level among the people around me. I believe that, that's an integral part. I think the younger generations are an integral part. I mean, look, my mom and dad, my mom was white and dad was black, right? They got married in 1961. Not a good year for two people of different races to get married at all and have children. And, I look around me and I see all the mixed families and people, and I say, what a difference, never would have happened. Even 20 years ago, it wasn't happening. And so, there's got to be, I do have hope too. When I say that, when you were asking, is there cohesiveness among Black people, to get things done? I believe there can be,
Right.
but I believe it goes further into, all people who want, a better situation, a better place, for themselves and for everyone else. It's going to take it. I feel like it's going to take a miracle, but no, I do feel that it can happen. But I also feel that, maybe I won't see it in my lifetime. I would like to. I would like to see more advancement. I would like to see us move forward. But man, we have hard heads. Human beings.
We don't need everybody, right? We just need the majority. We just need a force
Yes, there
to
you
make
go.
a difference.
Yep.
It's funny because I was working on a project. I'm sorry, Rodney.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying I was working on a project that I can't talk about because it's not out yet. But that was a constant theme throughout that project was, what is our responsibility in terms of educating and getting empathy from other groups? And, I don't know why it's so hard to just see another human being, regardless of what they look like and what their complexion is, and treat them like a human being the same way you'd want to be treated. I don't need you to empathize Thank you, Josh. I agree. I don't need you to empathize with what my people have been through. I don't need you to go through it. I just need you to act like a human being and just give a little humanity
Right.
to another human being instead of treating somebody as though you are better and they are not. And it's not my job to explain everything to you. There's a library full of books, and it is exhausting. I agree with you. I'd been asked once upon a time, why do Black people riot and burn down their own neighborhoods? Well, this right here, Tulsa, you started it. You guys started burning down our neighborhoods first. And unfortunately, there are a group of people who feel just as disgusted with themselves, and also a group of people that are just as angry, and that anger internalizes itself. And that's why. But before you ask those questions, ask the question as to why a group of white men would come in and burn down homes and leave 10,000 people homeless. And we don't even know how many people were dead. It annoys me when the news is saying 300 people, 300 people, 300, not 301, not 302, 300 people were dead. No, you don't know how many people were dead because there are mass graves that no one is taking the time in 100 years to find and excavate and take those people out and give them proper burial. I get riled up, I'm sorry, about this topic and other topics because this is not just a conversation because it's 100 years. This is something that is impacting us as a people 100 years later, possibly 200 years later, and we should get indignant and mad because nothing has really changed so much for a man, and I keep saying it, who is running a city to say this could happen again.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, my hope is that, we continue to build political power. We continue to build economic power. We continue to invest in one another, invest in our children and our youth, in our colleges, our health system. We must continue that, and I think that's so important to continue to build up our community. And then be open minded enough to let in those individuals who want to help us to continue to build upon that.
Yeah.
And everybody is not going to be with us. We know that. I mean, if January 6th showed you anything, it showed you who was, what kind of people are out in this world. It's pretty amazing. I mean, even when you look at the current situation with like the current NBA playoffs, and over the past few days, the players have been spat upon. They've been, water bottles have been thrown at players. Just all kinds of things have been happening, and that's the kind of society that we live in. I mean, I myself would never think of going to a sporting event and running on the court or throwing coffee or water at it or one of the athletes. But the individuals that are doing that feel empowered, and they really felt empowered over the past 4 years to you know to do and say whatever they wanted because it was being pardon me, what'd you say?
No, continue on.
No, I was saying it was being
I was going to
kind
say
of,
passport.
yes, it was, yes, so it's we've come a long way in society. We still have a ways to go, and like you said, Audrey, I hope I see it in my lifetime. But we can, our past tells us, or our history tells us, that we're going to continue the fight. The fight is going to continue, and
Yes.
we're going to continue
Yep.
to as a sermon that I heard from one of my pastors in Cleveland, Ohio. Hang on, hold on, and press on. And that's what we're going to continue to do each and every day. So, well, look, we're just about at the end of our time together. I really appreciate both you, Audrey, and Leanna, for joining me this evening on this fireside chat. It was good
Thank
seeing
you.
you both. Um, Audrey, we have to revisit having our our our, our in-person breakfasts at some point.
Yes, we
But it's good.
do. Thank you.
It's good to see you. Good seeing you, Leanna.
Thank
And
you.
I want to just remind everyone to two things. Tune in to watch classic Black films, documentaries, original programs, much more on American Legacy Network at AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv. And pick up Leanna's art. Pick up a copy of the May-June issue of Essence and
Yeah.
read
Yes.
Leanna's article, the full article.
Can I just say
And you
one
can,
more thing, Rodney?
sure.
Can I say one more thing? For anyone who's watching who wants to know more about Tulsa, like they haven't seen anything so far, go to OWN at 8 o'clock. That's Oprah's channel. The woman who wrote and directed 20 Pearls has a documentary coming on tonight at 8 o'clock on Oprah's channel.
That's
Okay.
good. That's good. And then you can
Great.
also see our ALN Remembers segment we did on AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv and on our Facebook page. So you can catch that. So
Mhm.
again, Audrey, Leanna, thank you. Continue to educate yourselves,
Thank
be
you.
empowered, and let's continue to fight and continue to press on.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. All right.